We have two sponsors of today's event. We have Carla Roncato, who's the Vice President of Identity and Authpoint at WatchGuard. And she's got a great background. She came from Microsoft, and she's a lot of experience in this field. I'm Tom Ruffalo. I'm a CISA. I'm President of eSecurity Solutions. And I'm going to introduce the topic, and then we're going to get a couple of polls today, so we'll get some feedback from you guys, and hopefully give you some information you don't already have, and helps you move forward with your 2023-2024 cybersecurity solutions. So let's talk about why are people still talking about MFA. MFA is an old topic. It's been around for a long time. You would think everybody would have it. There would be no issues. There would be nobody breaking into anybody's accounts. But if you really look at some of the big reasons, we can show you statistics, but the big reasons why people are still talking about MFA is because somebody in your organization might be having a discussion along this line where somebody logged into our payroll account, and it's a cloud-based payroll, and they added new employees. When you add new employees, guess what? You're adding new accounts to be paid, and you could be automatically paying people that don't belong to your company and not even know it. And believe me, this happens more often than you think. And it's probably one of the biggest wake-up calls anybody ever gets. Another one would be somebody log into our bank account and send an ACH payment to somebody that I don't know. These are nightmares. And these are the kind of things, these are the reasons why you have to have strong authentication and access control for your company, and personally as well. Passwords are weak. Well, everybody knows that. We've been talking about that forever. And they can be hacked or brute forced or various methods, but bottom line is by themselves, they're not adequate. Another major reason, which is driving a lot of security decisions, is all regulations require strong access control. And that's just, that's been in regulation since the beginning of time. Cyber insurance companies mostly require MFA to get insurance, and that's, specifically calls out MFA. So if you want cyber insurance, the requirements are going up annually. Cyber insurance companies are losing money. And lastly, if you lack adequate access control, the rest of your security may not matter at all, right? So that's if you let somebody in and they've got unrestricted access, what difference does it make what other security you've got? So making security and access control even harder. These four reasons are reasons that should be driving all kinds of cybersecurity decisions in your organization. The data, applications, and people are all completely distributed. Everything is being conducted over the web. So we've lost complete control, and we have to somehow get our arms around all of that. So we can't afford to ignore all these additional risks, and access control is job number one. So what about access control requirements, and what's necessary to provide acceptable security for your company? Number one, you have to implement least privilege access control policies. You have to define who can access what, and what they can do in that environment. You need strong authentication, which basically means MFA and other types of solutions. Most companies like SSO to improve security and ease of use. It does both, and it makes it so that if you don't get an appropriate a level of ease of use, some people won't even want to use it. Another thing that's related is cloud application visibility. So if you look at like a CASB application or security to manage cloud applications, it provides visibility, right? So you need to know what people are using, since cloud apps are one of the major threats, and you need to have, and as IT administrators or security administrators or business owners, we need to make sure that we're choosing applications that support user roles, privileges, and approval processes, so that even if you get in, you need to be able to control the access. And then we need enforcement mechanisms such as monitoring, alerting, and blocking. And that's the kind of thing that a SIEM can provide, with a SOC wrapped around that. There are other tools that also provide some levels of monitoring, alerting, and blocking. So what will define successful access control features within your company? Well, the list that I've got includes number one, you have to guarantee the user identity. You have to know who gets in. You have to be able to guarantee that. You have to be able to control access, not just restricting access. We need to be able to control the usage. So now they're in, we have to be able to control usage. That has to be something that applies and works for IT staff, all users, and all administrators. It has to be simple to deploy and to use. It has to be affordable, and it has to support all usage cases, such as web applications, network, data stores, IT infrastructure. So that's a lot, but unless you can really attack all of that, it's difficult maybe to get it implemented or to make sure it's being used broadly in your company. Just as an overview of eSecurity Solutions, a lot of you know us because we work with you already, but if you don't, we're a compliance level security solution provider. We work only with companies. We provide full information security management system cycle solutions, including risk assessments, compliance level risk assessments, security products from vendors like WatchGuard, and managed security, including a SIEM SOC solution, which is sort of the apex solution in monitoring and event management. We work with a lot of different industries. So let's go to a poll. Let us launch the first one, which is very, very general. Okay, here we go. So first question is, do you use MFA? Are you using it? Plan to use it? Don't know. All that's useful information. All right, we're going to close that, show it. Theoretically, it's showing. Let's see if it's showing somewhere. So we got about 63%. Let's see, where'd it go? Where's the results? I can't even see the results. I know they're there somewhere. Poll results. Okay. So, okay, we're not going to, then based on that information, oh, there it is. I couldn't even see it. Okay. So let's move on to our next speaker, and she will make use of that information. Carla is going to be providing you her perspective and WatchGuard's perspective on this topic.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the introduction, Tom. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. As Tom mentioned, I'm Carla Roncato. I'm the Vice President of Identity here at WatchGuard. Welcome to our webinar, 6 Reasons Why You Need Multi-Factor Authentication Now. We're actually going to go beyond talking about multi-factor authentication, so hopefully you'll find this session valuable because we are going to announce some really exciting things as well towards the middle way of this webinar. So today's session, you're in the right one. If you are interested in talking about mitigating phishing and data breaches, protecting distributed cloud applications, as Tom already alluded to, promoting a really strong access control and data protection risk management approach, also ensuring that you're meeting your regulatory obligations and that you actually can acquire cyber insurance if needed. And last but not least, talking a little bit more about how important, just some anecdotal key use cases, the way Tom described different scenarios in which your company could be at risk, and in particular, the fact that the bad actors of the world are financially motivated. They really aren't just playing around any longer. It's all about following the money. All right, with that, we will get started. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about WatchGuard because, as Tom mentioned, we're a partner. We build a unified security platform that's delivered by the cloud called WatchGuard Cloud. This platform is intended for managed service providers and managed security service providers to service clients and customers like yourself. So we do not work directly with organizations. We work with the channel partners that we have worldwide globally, of which there are over 12,000. So the way we think about this platform is, as of course I mentioned, cloud managed with the ability to deploy, administer, and manage all of our products through our WatchGuard Cloud platform. We have 4 product lines in particular within the WatchGuard portfolio. We have a set of network security products that includes hardware, fireboxes, and firewalls, as well as access points for Wi-Fi. And then we also have endpoint security products, which you might be familiar with, called Panda, which is being rebranded under the WatchGuard endpoint security brand. I'm here to talk to you about the item in the middle, identity security. So I'll cover multi-factor authentication. I have 2 products in my portfolio, AuthPoint MFA, and a new product that I'll be unveiling today called Total Identity Security, which includes a password manager as well as dark web credential monitoring. As you head down this, exclusively we focus on workforce identity, so I won't necessarily talk about use cases that are in the consumer or vendor risk management realm, but I'm more than happy to take questions at the end of the call if there are any. We have an identity framework project here within WatchGuard, which is to unify the way we handle user identities and devices from a zero trust perspective. I won't be covering that today, but I think it's important for you to know that we're on a path towards this zero trust, which is denied by default, which means both the user and the device are denied by default until they have been evaluated and also verified. We also have a product called ThreatSync, which is our XDR, and all of the managed providers that we work with are able to enable XDR at no additional cost, so they can provide you with the service level of being able to determine if there's an indicator of attack or an indicator of compromise, and also provide automated and manual remediation options available. So it's important to note that there's a much broader platform behind our individual products. We're also very flexible in the way you can consume and buy. We have monthly subscriptions, we have points, we have 1-year and 3-year terms, and even 5-year on some of our network security hardware as well. And we're all about being API first, as well as a significant number of integrations. So while we integrate within our own product stack, we also integrate with many of the commercially available requirements that are needed for, in particular, managed service providers, but also for end customers like yourself, whether that be cloud SaaS apps or tools that you use in your day-to-day business as well, in addition to other assets you may already own that are of a non-WatchGuard branded component. So if you already own some other security hardware that is not ours, we still work to do our best to integrate with your existing investments. And last but not least, this is all underpinned by automation in terms of both business automation to make it easy to buy, try and buy, as well as from a security automation perspective in terms of configuring, administering, managing, and remediating. All right, with that, let's talk a little bit about business challenges with workforce identities, and then following this, we'll actually have a poll before we get into the next section. So, you know, Tom sort of kicked us off talking about those 6 factors that really lead us to some of these business challenges, but I really want to sort of put sort of some data behind that. So the human element continues to drive breaches. The 2022 Verizon Data Breach Investigations Report, which is a premier report that gets delivered once a year, continues to indicate that 82% of breaches involve a human element. And so while enterprises, you can see here, are to a degree lower impacted, about 61% experiencing a breach due to human element, they also have a lot more resources to their availability in terms of combating these breaches. But when you look at small and medium businesses, they're much more vulnerable to credential theft at 75%, which means even if you have MFA deployed, it's still potentially not fully deployed across your entire organization or maybe across all of your use cases. And we'll talk about those use cases in a moment as well. Additionally, as you move to the center, SMBs in particular, but employees generally worldwide, have an average of 27 passwords to remember. So these would be for applications that don't have SSO, so single sign-on capabilities, or they haven't been enabled yet with single sign-on capabilities. That's a lot of passwords to remember. And one of the risks associated with the fact that there are so many is the delta between the workplace and the personal reuse. So it's very common for workplace credentials to be, the passwords to be reused in personal, but it's even higher to see personal credentials, this could be for Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, being used in the workplace. So it's really concerning because if any one of those single applications or credentials gets breached and ends up in the dark web, the attackers know to try those passwords everywhere that you might have another credential. So it becomes a very easy way for them to guess your password, even though it's not much of a guess because they've acquired it from the dark web. So as we look forward, another business challenge, which again, Tom alluded to already, is the fact that the pandemic drove a requirement for remote work and work from home. And now as we continue into 2023 and the rest of the year and into 2024, so beyond essentially the pandemic, Gallup poll announced that they had done a small business study here and that 55% of businesses will continue to support hybrid and remote work arrangements. And more interestingly, IDG Foundry that covers security priority studies indicate that these same businesses intend to outsource their security, 42%, which is to a managed service provider like eSecurity here, or invest in additional authentication and access control. So you're in good company if you're continuing to evolve and expand and essentially broaden your coverage over access control, because that's what we're also seeing from a larger data set. This is somewhere in the range of around 1,500 respondents. So it's a pretty decent sample size. All right, with that in mind, let's go to poll number 2. Tom, if you could kick off that question, that would be great.
There it is.
Perfect. I don't actually see it on the screen, so I'm going to assume that it's okay.
It's the same problem I had.
Yeah. So you just tell me when you want to kick it off, and then we will be good.
All right, well, it's up and people are voting.
I see it, yeah.
We got 40% of the people have voted.
Great. I think we're,
okay.
Yeah, we'll get a little higher and then we'll transition. Right. Yeah, you can close it. That's fine. Great. So here's the results, essentially. I'm sure you guys are seeing them right now. We know that Microsoft's Active Directory, whether it's on premises or if you're using the directory service, Azure Active Directory, or something comparable to it, say from an Okta, very necessary once you get above a certain number of employees. It's very difficult to manage groups of employees and provisioning users and whatnot. There's a number of different access management technologies, and in addition, privilege access, PAM or PIM, depending on who you ask. What the point is each one of these technology areas is actually kind of a technology silo. They're very purpose-built and they perform their function extremely well, but they're not necessarily designed to detect threats or to be aware of compromise that is occurring outside of these specific tools. And so in that way, they were designed for workflow, user productivity and enablement, and for distributing credentials with ease across an organization, but not necessarily, like I said, detecting that something has happened and maybe actually exploited. These systems aren't really able to detect unauthorized access, as an example, unless it's continuous number of attempts and then it logs and locks out based on a policy. So because of the fact that there's so many of these types of technologies, it's important to companies like WatchGuard to try to consolidate on some of this and give you more value in an individual product bundle than having to buy 5 different products in order to get the level of coverage that you're looking for. So we're going to talk about that going forward, but I just wanted you to know that affordability message that you also heard from Tom at the kickoff. TCO is really important, total cost of ownership, and identity technology is a necessary thing in order for, again, employees to be productive and do their jobs. But moreover, it's the best money you've probably ever spent in order making sure the right person is getting the right access at the right time to do the right things. And that's what we're really talking about here today. All right, so just for generalizing what multi-factor authentication is, it's something you know today as a PIN, password, or passphrase. It's some knowledge that you have. These are intended to be secrets, but unfortunately, as a result of phishing, they are no longer secrets, and password-only solutions are inherently vulnerable and, of course, lead to data breaches. Something you have, such as a mobile app with an authenticator app on it, a USB hardware token, for example, or even a smart card. So if you work in the healthcare industry, you might be walking around with your badge and using that as a way to authenticate yourself as a nurse or as a doctor, as an example. Something you are, such as intrinsic to you and unique to you, fingerprint, face, and voice recognition are some examples. And there is a fourth category, which is more about something you do. And that's things like behavioral, being left-handed or right-handed, or the way you handle keystrokes or mouse movements. It could even include liveness detection to make sure that you are, in fact, the person in front of the camera and that you aren't spoofing a camera, as an example. All right, with that as a backdrop, we at WatchGuard have a product that I mentioned already called AuthPoint MFA. And so it's essentially a really commonly used product in terms of its capabilities and usage. We offer multiple token and authentication methods, both offline and online. It works with Windows and Mac. Our mobile app, our mobile authenticator app is designed for iOS and Android, and we also offer PIN and biometric protection for those mobile tokens, so that even if you lost your device, any adversary or anyone who picked up that device, you left it in an Uber, wouldn't be able to act as you or impersonate you going forward. We also offer hardware-based tokens for those individuals that do not want to use a personal device, or maybe you still have a flip phone, because I've actually heard of folks that still don't have smart devices, and you still want to be able to use a handheld token in order to perform authentication. We sell a fair amount of these hardware tokens in Europe, where privacy is preferred, and where mobile devices, maybe there isn't cellular coverage, for example, or good Wi-Fi coverage, in order to ensure that you have good connectivity. All right. In terms of what we also offer with our offering, again, you're going to hear me talking about bringing and collapsing some of these separate market categories or separate solution areas into one solution. So our offering includes a secure SSO to cloud apps experience. So essentially, any application that is SSO capable can be placed behind an application portal that can be unique to your company, and you can protect those apps with MFA, so that you are sure, again, that the user is verified before they are given an SSO, what's called a SAML token, in order to log on and be able to have that seamless ease of use. So this portal, as an example, has a number of very, very popular cloud applications. It's customizable, and we have over 150 integrations with all types of apps. So again, it's all identity technologies are standards based, and those standards lead to interoperability across the vast majority of applications that are available. All right, so in our world, the top use cases for MFA in the small and medium-sized business segment, this is a study as a result of the Cyber Readiness Institute that surveyed global small, medium businesses last year. So in terms of your cohort, 56% of respondents that use MFA use it for laptops and desktops, so Macs and Windows in this example. 45% on databases to protect that data. It's critically important, because that's, after all, really what typically the adversary is after, and servers especially. they become a hosting ground for additional privileges that they can then use to get access to another system and yet another system once they've gained access to a primary mission critical system like this. Accounting and finance software, again, those examples that Tom mentioned. I have a similar example of a CFO who was at a hotel and needed to do one of those bank transfers that you mentioned, Tom. And he did it at the hotel business center computer. So that machine, of course, was already compromised, and the adversaries collected his credentials, and then they made bank transfers to their accounts after he had completed that transaction as well. So this is a very current, real story, and it happens all the time. And again, the convenience of using the business center in a hotel, we get it. But the fact that you did a bank transfer and didn't think about the fact that that machine was already compromised and that you should only be able to access that financial system from your corporately managed machine backed by MFA, kind of inexcusable. Back to your point about human resources software, really important, whether it's onboarding new employees, real employees, or deprovisioning the employees that are leaving, laid off, or just moving on, retiring. Really important that you maintain the integrity of that, because that's your authoritative source, and it's where all your data gets ingested into, say, your Active Directory, your Azure Active Directory, for all your technology access. So it's really important that you not only protect the human resources software, but it's also accurately kept up to date with who your employees are. Otherwise, you end up with a bunch of accounts that stay long after the employee is no longer with you. Email, calendaring, productivity software, that goes without saying. We're all big users of Office 365 here in the world for the collaboration, but it includes Zoom and Box and all the other kinds of collaboration software. And today we're using GoToMeeting as an example. And last but not least, for those organizations that still have a predominantly on-premises world, VPN access to allow remote workers to be able to get into a specific corporate asset needs to be backed by MFA, so that, again, you're verifying who the user is making that access request to get to that private, essentially private asset, resource, document, whatever it happens to be that they need to get from within your corporate perimeter. It also covers remote access from a perspective of servicing, if you need to have a service desk call or a support call in order to come and troubleshoot on a particular machine. So it works both ways. All right, now that we've covered that, let's cover a little bit about the business benefits. Often what we hear from the small business segment, and it's also consistent with what we heard from the Cyber Readiness Institute survey, is that it's not necessarily super clear what the business benefits and security outcomes are, but we wanted to make sure we at least provided a few examples, especially if you're justifying a renewal for MFA or expanding your MFA rollout. One of the number one business benefits is it really addresses the top risks that lead to data breaches, these credential-based incidents that we talked about. And there's so many techniques that there's actually too many to enumerate, but one of the most obvious ones is phishing. Email phishing and social engineering techniques compromise password-only accounts. It happens every single minute of every single day. It happens in your personal life when you get those Norton antivirus emails saying that you've purchased something, or the ones from that say they're from McAfee, or even the ones that say they're your Amazon Prime account. So it happens tremendously in your consumer life, but it continues to also happen in your workplace. And again, you're going to see them coming from both sides, but it's critical that when you're acting in the role of the employee, that you have some protections to verify that it is in fact you making that access request. One of the big benefits we just talked about already is enabling that secure hybrid work environment, regardless of location. People are able to work not just remotely, but from any location and take a month and go live in another state or go live in another country if they are able to do that. So location is pretty no longer a corporate location. It's no longer a location that necessarily is known to your organization. So again, enabling that in a secure way in order for location to not be as important, or at least be something that you can manage through policy. Maintaining employee productivity. Again, single sign-in is probably one of the best technologies that was ever delivered in order to not have to have individual accounts for every single application, like those 27 passwords to remember. So the more that you can consolidate your application access to the application portal, the happier all your employees are, and you can continue to onboard new applications one app at a time, or you can remove them, which is also very convenient, and be assured that all the access is gone from them as well, especially if you're switching between one provider and another in terms of applications. In terms of security outcomes, enhancing your organization's security with an identity first approach is really sort of the thing to do. I don't want to say it's in fashion, but I'll say that understanding that the perimeter is no longer the thing protecting your corporate entity is incredibly important, and just acknowledging the fact that humans and human error, as well as the adversaries, require that you take that identity first approach, because people are vulnerable, but they are also the cause of vulnerability. So it goes both ways. You want to protect your employees' credentials and identities from being stolen, but you also want them to be protected from them should their credentials be compromised. Also, I mentioned this a little bit, but it's so important that you're able to configure risk-based policies based on what's going on in your organization. You may have some employees that work as contractors and they only work 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday to Friday. You don't pay them overtime. So it's really important that they only work a certain amount of hours per day. But it's also really important that they don't work outside of the hours that they're supposed to be working, like weekends or nights. And so we have policies that are able to help you make those decisions so that those types of activities don't occur. And in fact, you're mitigating a potential risk of a weekend breach or out of hours breach, say from a contract employee that works hourly for you. And last but not least, zero trust. Achieving a zero trust disposition from a security strategy perspective means just verifying that every user access request across your company is verified. It's just an additional step that thwarts any bad actor who is currently trying to socially engineer or phish you. They'll just move on to another target the moment you start to create these deterrents. So in its way, it acts as an insurance policy, or at least a mitigating strategy as a deterrent. So we talk about how effective MFA has been in blocking account compromise. This statistic is widely shared and used by companies around the world, including Microsoft and others that have been in the business a long time, and they see billions and billions of authentications per day. So it's really where we get that stat. It's also effective at blocking automated attacks. So while we talk about the adversaries as though they're an individual sitting somewhere in their basement, one credential at a time, they actually build tools and farms to do automated bots. So it's not even that they're taking that much effort to try to socially engineer you individually, which would be referred to as spear phishing. That means you're the target, you're the CFO they want. They might spend a whole lot of time just on you, but in every other case, it's actually a bunch of tools trying dictionary attempts or rainbow tables. So these are all automated tools that just sit there and run and continue to attempt to breach a credential or compromise or collect credentials. So again, it's automated and there's not even a lot of effort. Once they've set up the infrastructure to do it, they just let it run. In terms of the most popular form of multi-factor, it's push notification. So if you're currently using push notification, you're in good company, because it is the most popular and widely deployed second factor, essentially, of verification. We offer it with AuthPoint MFA, but we also offer the offline mode, so you don't have to be connected to the internet or have cellular coverage in order to be able to verify who you are. We have QR code and we have time-based one-time passcodes as well. So that's a connection between the mobile app and your endpoint, for example, or the app. And last but not least, it's low cost per user. So one of the things about MFA just as a standalone product is that it's typically around an MSRP of $3 to $5, depending on who the provider is, who the technology solution provider is. In the case of AuthPoint, we've added in the single sign-on, the SAML, the application portal, the ability to do VPN, all those integrations that I talked about in terms of use cases, in addition to the mobile app and the ability to do laptop or PC logon for a low price. So that is, our MSRP is $2.75. And so depending on the volume, you can pay as little as $1 per user per month. That is an incredible value, because if you were in the enterprise, I can tell you that is not what you'd be spending per user per month when it comes to the number of technologies that are available to you. All right. So adopting MFA achieves this regulatory compliance. So depending, again, what industry you're in, some of these may apply to you, some of them may not, but this is just a representative example of some of the regulations and some of the standards that are required. So if you're a government or small local state government, chances are you're required to at least adhere to one or more of the NIST standards, as an example in the bottom here. If you're in healthcare, of course, access to health records, and especially anyone seeking electronic information on their own health record information, as an example. GDPR, it's another way to make sure that information doesn't cross the boundary from European countries into the US or into other non-sovereign locations. So again, it's another way to verify not just who the user is, but also that they are in fact within the domain of the EU versus in outside of the domain. PCI, which is for payment card industry. This is a great use case, because more and more we're seeing the different entities that are responsible for oversight over financial systems, whether it is banking or loan applications or mortgage, anything to do with financial services, even down to like the finance manager of an auto dealership. If they're responsible for helping you with your loan application or your lease application, they're required now to also have MFA. So we're seeing any access to financial information or credit or anything related to those payment systems, it's intrinsic on all organizations to comply with these regulations. In terms of the cost of cyber insurance, we have some data here talking about the average costs per year for a small business. It's around $1,400, almost $1,500, and it can go up to as much as almost $2,400, depending on companies' level of risk and size and scope. The liability limits are often about $1 million, but as you may have noticed, most of the ransom that you see in the news is multi-millions of dollars. And what these cyber criminals are doing is they're actually checking through different sources that they have how much the premium payout is, and they're actually ransoming the exact amount they believe that the insurer will pay. So if you had $2 million of liability coverage, they will ask for $2 million in ransom. So they're getting very crafty, and they know that about 80% of the claims get paid. And so the issue is they're getting paid. So the whole system is now just paying the adversaries for their breaches and for their ransoms. And your premiums will continue to go up, but also it'll become very, very difficult to get reinsured. It's not a given that you'll get reinsured. You are required to mitigate the originating cause, and the insurers do the investigations. So a lot of the decision is out of your hands in terms of how the investigation goes as well. The other thing about insurers is they often don't help you recover your data. So if you don't have a good backup or you don't pay the ransom, they're really not going to take a big effort. Your insurance typically doesn't cover recovering your data if it's not recoverable, which could put a business out of business, literally. So it's important to note that not relying on cyber insurance as the fallback instead of getting the solution in place, it's not an option. It's not a reason to not move forward with MFA or other access control technologies that your organization may need. All right, Tom, we're up for poll question number 3. What other IAM tools do you use today?
It is shown.
It is.
People are voting.
Excellent.
We have a lot of password managers.
That's awesome to hear.
So 50%.
Good.
And I think that's all we're going to get.
Yeah, perfect. Great. All right. It's really great to see these numbers showing up. It also shows a degree of sophistication, but also some of the password managers are natively available in Edge browser and Chrome browser, as an example. Often you have them on your own mobile device for your own personal credentials as well. For Apple, for example, iOS. All right, let's get into what are the challenges with password-only authentication? This shouldn't be new to anyone, but I think there's so many widespread issues that sometimes putting it down in a visual like this really helps instantiate just how prevalent the problem really is. Static passwords that never change. It happens a lot. It happens on modems and routers. So it's not just a user thing, it's kind of a whole industry thing. The fact that there's a significant reuse of corporate passwords for personal use, as well as vice versa, which I talked about the stats in the beginning. Same password for everything. Again, that's a horrible practice, but unbelievably common. And then also the fact that credentials get compromised and are put up for sale in the dark web, but you have virtually no visibility into the fact that that's occurred unless the provider notifies you that your data was involved through a responsible disclosure process, but they aren't always obligated to do that, and they don't always know that their data has been dumped on the dark web. That's another problem. Weak and easy to crack passwords. Again, you may have set them back when you wanted it to be easy to remember, and now it's so easy that anyone can crack it or guess it. Shared administrator level passwords. They don't always have to be administrator level. So I'm mentioning this because you might have two people in a marketing role or in a sales role that share a sales at your company mailbox, or maybe you have 3 or 4 people that respond to help. You have a help at company.com, and so you have a shared use case here. It doesn't necessarily always have to be administrator level, but it means multi-user potentially. Again, we talked about too many passwords to remember. There's lots of corporate applications that you may have that were built for your business but aren't commercially available anywhere else, and aren't SaaS, that don't support MFA today. So there's no way necessarily for you today to front end them with MFA support. And then of course the same old password resets for forgotten passwords. So again, the whole ceremony of going through having to reset a password because you forgot what it is because you have too many. These are just really common challenges, frustrating things that we all deal with by using password only as a mechanism, and kind of, just getting a little bit lazy in the way we use them. So I'm going to talk about a new product line that we, again, are moving forward with, which takes everything I talked to you about today on multi-factor authentication, everything I talked to you about the ability to do single sign-on with SAML tokens for applications that are SaaS enabled in particular, and enable that really nice ease of use, seamless use backed by MFA. We also have a dark web scan tool, which allows administrators of if you have a company like Ease Security running your environment, they're able to scan your domain names and see if data from your organization has actually ended up in a dark web breach database. And we're adding 2 new capabilities to Total Identity Security, which is a new product bundle called Dark Web Monitoring Service, which will look for your individual credentials as opposed to the domain level data breach, as well as a password manager with a corporate and private vault. So you can put those credentials in there that you might need to share. For the example I used, like you have a marketing app or a sales app that you just want to use a generic credential called sales. And a private vault again, so you may have the need to protect your Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn accounts, because why wouldn't you want to do that and not be phished in your consumer life as well? So let's get into the the details. The dark web monitoring service is really cool. It's unique to WatchGuard. We've actually had it for a little while, and our threat lab uses it to help us better understand the threat landscape. So similarly to what I'm sure Verizon does, because they see in volume what's occurring with credential loss. Our service is a proactive service, again, that looks for your credential information across the monitored domains. So if you have 3 or more domains, in our case, we have WatchGuard as a domain because I work at WatchGuard. We also have a domain called Panda because we acquired a company named Panda. And we have other domains that we use, so we're able to monitor all those domains and then specifically look for the credentials that appear in the dark web databases that we have access to that get published to us. This notifies the administrator. So let's just pretend for this scenario that's Tom. Tom would get notified that my credential was compromised through being able to run this on-demand service, and he would have added my domain, for example, to the tenant that's managed through WatchGuard Cloud. And I myself am actually able to go to my own application. So I have the AuthPoint Authenticator app on my mobile phone, and I can also request a check against my own credentials at any point in time from an on-demand perspective. So I would be notified if one of my credentials was found in the dark web, as well as Tom would be notified if one of my credentials was found. So either one of us can take a mitigating action like trigger a password change or turn on MFA or change a policy and require it. So that's an example of how that dark web monitoring service gives you the visibility at any point in time throughout a year, or 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, the life of that credential, and allows you to increase the efficacy of your passwords going forward when you use them, especially as a primary. If you use them as the only way you authenticate, if you use them as a primary in addition with MFA, it makes them that much more valuable because you'll be able to protect them both from phishing, and I'll explain how that works in a moment. So the password manager itself allows you to set a vault password to ensure that you only have to remember that vault password and not the individual credentials that you've added to the vault. You can elect to import them as they are with their existing passwords, and then you'll be able to tell if they're duplicate or weak, which you probably already know both, but you'll be presented with this information so you can actually act on it. And you'll also be able to change those passwords one password at a time by using our advanced password generator. It uses modern cryptographic approach, so it's extremely cutting edge in the sense of its ability to generate these passwords, and highly protected from side channel attacks and GPU cracking attempts. So again, one of those things I mentioned was these automated bots that just sit there and attempt to crack passwords. We've used an algorithm that is much better at preventing these. It would take a significant amount of GPU horsepower in order to do this. And boy, they better really want to target you then if they're going to spend the effort. So the idea here is you also have a browser extension, which allows you to essentially have these credentials between your primary browser. You can install it in all your browsers. It's totally up to you if you want to use Edge and Chrome at the same time on your corporate machine, and then of course on your mobile app as well. So you have that shared vault essentially between yourself. There's also the capability, as I mentioned, to share, but you now have visibility into who you're sharing with, which is often not the case. Often it's a sticky note, or it's a spreadsheet, or it's a document where all of these shared usernames and passwords are stored, and those documents are the ones that are stolen typically and dumped, and then all of those credentials get exploited because the document got stolen. So again, it takes just one compromised credential to lead to multiple compromised accounts. So this password manager comes with the credential monitoring, with our within the total identity security product line, and it's all together delivered from WatchGuard Cloud. And again, I'm not going to announce the pricing here, but if you can imagine, if you already use a password manager today from one of the other third-party password managers, typical price is somewhere around $5 MSRP. And again, if you add in the MFA and you add in the SSO, you're talking about maybe somewhere around $15 MSRP per user per month. And we are 1/3 of that price at WatchGuard Cloud based on MSRP. And again, based on volume, you can be paying as little as $2 to $3 per user per month, depending on the size of your organization. All right. So I'm just going to show you a couple of examples of things that you can do today before we run out of time. Total Identity Security and AuthPoint MFA are available for trial. So company like eSecurity can immediately provision a 30-day trial to you, up to 250 users. That allows you to try the entire product that we've talked about today and see if it fits your needs at the right price point for the right use cases. You may be using multiple solutions from multiple vendors, and the point of this is to consolidate it down so you have a very strong access control strategy, but also a single SKU to help you solve the breadth of your authentication solution needs. And it's really intended to help you consolidate so that you don't have to manage multiple vendors, or your provider doesn't have to manage multiple vendors on your behalf. And with that, I invite you to download an exclusive IDC white paper. It's just a 2-pager. It's called No Excuse Delaying Enabling Zero Trust Environments by Leveraging MFA. The QR code is live and you can get the document yourself. There's no gate. You don't have to answer any questions. You can just have the document. And it specifically covers the role of MSPs and how they can help you manage, deploy, select these technologies, trial these technologies in order to move forward with your access control and zero trust security strategies. And over to you, Tom.
Okay, great. That was great. I mean, I really I learned some stuff, and it's great that you've taken the opportunity to announce new product. It's
Yeah.
nice to be announcing a new product to this audience today. It's
Yeah.
not even announced for a week publicly. So
that's right. So
it
you're
shows confidence.
exclusively getting preview to a product launch before a product launch.
I know, and I feel honored. I can tell you that for sure.
I'm delighted. So thank you for welcoming me to join this webinar today.
Sure. So we do. So yeah, we'll take some questions now. The people are asking some in the questions box. Meaning you can type in your questions. That would be a good place to do it. Also, just to summarize, the follow-ups, next steps can be, right, you can, our salespeople will follow up with you to have a discussion to see if there's any way we can help you. We can help by helping you define, diagnose, the use cases that you got and make sure that that works with a solution like this. We can of course provide quotes. There are there's some demo capabilities that are possible. We use it ourselves. We're using it for all kinds of things. Whether or not we can manage it, meaning we can do a managed MFA, so you don't have to manage it, or you can decide to self-manage it. And then there's the potential evaluation if you want to evaluate it and your team wants to set it up and do that. So let's start with questions. So here's one for the dark webs. For the dark web scan and dark web monitoring service, what is the detail level that would be provided? Currently, we report, but it is very generic and doesn't tell us what compromise found and where it is found.
Yeah, that's a very fair question. It is pretty rudimentary as our first entry into that dark web monitoring space. We're planning to enrich it so that you get a lot more detail. And what I didn't talk about today is what we're going to do with that information. So when I first kicked off the call, I talked about our XDR service. The intention is that those indicators of compromise and those will be risk scored and they'll be correlated, and you'll actually be able to get a report that says, hey, this is what we suggest you do as a automated remediating action, which would be things like that example I used with the contract hours, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday to Friday. We could terminate VPN session, terminate an endpoint session. So it could be log the user off of the endpoint, or it could include log them out of an application specifically. Don't allow any further authentications after those hours, after the 5 p.m. or on the Saturday and Sunday. So no re-authentications allowed. Force a password change through a secure mechanism like through the password manager, or through a self-service password reset tool that might be loaded as a credential provider in Windows, as an example. So there's different mechanisms. It could be to disable the account in Active Directory. There's a number of automated responses and mitigating activities that could occur in a more automated way. So just look at this as our entry point into creating the visibility that you actually have the problem, and you can take the mitigating or remediating steps. But we want to move to a more automated response in our upcoming post-GA releases. And so we're on that path already to ensuring that we can provide more of those automated remediation and scoring, risk scoring, correlating to see, again, if that credentials attempts have continued to pursue even after you've gone and done the password change and enabling MFA, because then we know there's really a bad actor trying to use that credential over and over and over again, and they're really not going away, as an example.
Okay. Can you read, Carla, can you read the questions down there? There's another one on dark web.
Oh, hold on one second. I don't know where I'm looking for them.
Okay. I can read it, but
Yeah, read it out to me, because I don't know where to look for the.
All
Oh,
right.
wait, I see it.
Dark web just tells you have an issue with someone trying to access your email. You can change your password all day long, and that has no impact on the dark web reporting.
That's true. Yeah. So we don't go back and do anything about the database itself. You're absolutely right. We are in the process of, we're not going to be able to obviously remove that information from its source, but what we will be able to do is, again, at least notify you that your credential has been compromised. But it also gives you the option of changing your username. So you don't necessarily have to keep the same username that you were using as well, which can also be a mitigating change besides changing the password as well. But again, our guidance is actually to enforce MFA. It's not just to keep living with password-only solutions. It's to really step up and have that verification step, so that, again, even if that password is, again, they can continue to be compromised long after. But if you move to the password manager and you have the password manager generating the password, the only thing that you're presenting into websites going forward or into applications going forward is the credentials are auto-filled, and you never know the password. You only know the vault password, and that's the unique password vault that you shouldn't reuse or share with anyone. And it's not known to us, and it's not known to any third party. It's only known to you.
Okay, and I will comment on dark web. Dark web is useful because you at least see when something is getting dumped onto the web, and when it's available, and even if it's not a very common password, you know that it's out there, and so that's a good alert. And you've only got so many different gates between you and getting into an account, and you certainly don't want the password to be compromised. So yes, you then need to change it clearly.
Yeah.
And you need two-factor. Second, there's a question on your EDPR, your endpoint solution, and it looks like there's requesting that patch management be something that's generally available, and that is a great tool. And
well, thank you for saying that, because that's a plan for us. I didn't talk about the roadmap here, but we're moving towards a more unified agent approach, a unified patch and update approach, a unified sync approach, which is some of what I kind of mentioned under that zero trust shared knowledge. So you will be delighted to see that we're heading in that direction, and it will become even easier to both manage and administer, but maintain security hygiene from an update perspective, which again is the stuff that you can control. You can control security hygiene because you can decide when to apply updates and patches.
Yeah. I mean, WatchGuard's got a whole bunch of stuff planned this year that will be available. So I mean, the thing I love about working with WatchGuard is the product line keeps expanding, and the solutions and the price points are designed for small to mid-sized companies. And so anybody that can bring enterprise level solutions down to the majority of the companies that are out there is I'm a great fan of, and that's why we like working with WatchGuard. So looks like we're out of time. I don't see any more questions, and thank you all for attending. There will be a giveaway. We'll notify whoever won the drawing, and look forward to seeing you on our next event, and please have a discussion with our security salespeople, and let's see how we can help you guys move forward in all areas of security, including managed security. Thanks very much.
Thank you.